Unless you're a fan of silent films exclusively, you must have seen a movie or more with a soundtrack. We all have, and it doesn't matter what type of films we're talking about. You know, they could be Disney movies, action movies, horror films, romantic comedies. We could even talk about videos for YouTube like this one. The point is, they all have one very important thing in common, which is that they all have music in them. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to try to focus a bit more on film music, because I'm not sure a lot of people actually know how music is used in films. I mean, I think we're all aware that sometimes there's music in a scene and sometimes there isn't. But how people decide which type of music to use and when is the important question here. For example, I could probably put a happy song here while I speak, and maybe change it to a sad song for this bit. The way I see it is pretty straightforward. Basically, there are two things that music can do for an image. It can either support the image or it can accompany it. Generally speaking, I would say that those two are the main things to look at, but within them, we have a ton of different functions. For instance, music can set us in a particular time or place. This is particularly obvious if we think of historic films, because music from the 18th century and music from the 90s are very, very different. But sometimes we only need to hear a specific sound or instrument to get an idea of where the scene is taking place. So if we hear a choir, we could probably assume that they're in a church. Or if we hear music representative of a place like mariachis from Mexico, or perhaps a traditional Chinese instrument, we might get a pretty good idea that that's what we're about to see, right? Music can also contribute to the psychological development of characters. It can give us an insight on what they might be feeling, on what they might be thinking, and overall just giving us a little extra to understand their personalities. Another kind of obvious function of music is to serve as a background for the dialogues. It can give them more weight, add a little bit more drama, or it can keep them light and funny. Oftentimes, music could simply resonate for a little longer while we see the actors on screen doing what they do, and that can be enough. It can also serve as a connector between two scenes, making the transitions a bit more natural and fluid. On top of that, it can be used to clarify a mood or a particular idea that you have for a scene. And by you, I mean the director or whoever's in charge. Now that last one ties directly with the fact that we can essentially influence the emotions of the viewers throughout the film. You know, we can make them feel more excited about something, we can make them feel a bit scared when we need to, we can push the limits of whenever someone's feeling sad and maybe even get some tears out of them, like in a good way, I suppose. But what all of that is doing is giving a chance to the viewer to get involved in the story and not just stay outside of it, which is pretty cool, I think. Alright, so now that we've covered some of the basic functions of music and film, we should talk about two very important things: the distinction between a film score and a soundtrack. A film score essentially means that it is original music that was composed and recorded especially for a film. It's designed to fit perfectly with the frames and the storyline, and although nowadays we have tons of different instrumentations being used for scoring, the most traditional way to do it is to use an orchestra. On the other hand, a soundtrack is a selection of already existing songs to be used in a film. Simple as that. Oh god. There are some special cases in which a song sometimes is commissioned to an artist for a particular project, and then I suppose that song would then be considered as part of the score. The idea is very simple. It was either composed specifically for the project, or it wasn't. Music is such an important part of films that usually directors have a very good idea of what it is they want to hear based on the story they're going to tell. Some directors may get very involved in the music, and some others might choose to leave that to the composer. But it's always very important to understand that the film and the music are not separate things. Like any other element in films, music is not there to make it look better, or because they had some silence they needed to fill. A good score, and keep in mind that this is just my opinion, is able to portray the essence of the story. I have noticed that most of my favourite films have some really incredible music. It doesn't simply sound great and memorable. In so many ways, the score adds another layer to the film that makes it able for us to understand it from a completely different point of view. Some epic scores that come to mind are Inception and Interstellar, by Hans Zimmer, of course. If I try to explain the experience of watching those films to someone who hasn't seen them, it would be very hard to do it with words. But if I were to use the score, it would definitely make much more sense. And that's because the music in those films isn't there to decorate them. The music is the film, in sound form. Cool, so if you've made it this far on the video, you're probably wondering who am I to be talking about this. In case you couldn't tell from the piano behind me, I am a musician and I love both film and music. And when I was about 16 years old, I had an epiphany about what I wanted to do with my life while watching a TV commercial, which is pretty odd. I put the link to the commercial down below, so if you want to go check that out, feel free to pause this video, go have a listen, and then come back. I also have to specify that I am in no way trying to promote the video or anything in it. So, the first time I watched this ad, I wasn't really paying attention, and to be honest, I can't even remember what I was doing at the time. All I know is that a few seconds of that music managed to find its way into my ear and just grabbed my attention, but it was too late. The commercial was over, I had no idea what had just happened, and the only thing I could do was wait. After that, I did what any other person in my situation would. I got obsessed with finding out something about the video. Every day I remember I would go home, turn the TV on, and I would just wait for the commercial to appear on TV so that I could get more information on the people who made the video, and hopefully that would take me all the way to the music. After a couple of weeks of trying to do this and several evenings searching on Google, I had nothing. In fact, I only found the video on YouTube fairly recently, like a couple of years ago I think. So now, it's 9 years later and I still have absolutely no idea who wrote that piece of music. Although, I do feel like I want to thank that person, because that video helped me realize when I was 16 years old that what I wanted to do with my life was compose music for other media. I didn't care if it was just a commercial or a TV show. I mean, the dream is a film, but I would be very happy with anything that comes my way. And the thing is, I don't just want to compose music. Perhaps this is something that every other single musician in the world wants, but what I would really like to do is to strike a chord in people's lives. And yes, I am fully aware of how ambitious that sounds, considering that I have only scored very few projects which only my friends and family have heard of, but it's taken me a while to get here and to feel this level of certainty about what it is that I want to do. Again, after this year I reckon certainty isn't something that we can heavily rely on, but here we are anyway. Now naturally, being 16 years old and having a bit of an idea of what I wanted to do with my life, I decided to go to music school and become a pianist. But, as a classical musician, most of my knowledge is about that kind of music. And when I finally started to learn about music for film, I realized that it doesn't have as much to do with music as I thought, and instead, it has loads to do with putting the music at the service of the image, which is something very, very different. So I suppose that's where I am. I can't say that I'm ready to become the next Rachel Portman or Hilda Gunnardóttir, even though that would be pretty cool, because that takes time and I still have a ton of things to learn. But as I get closer and closer to finishing university, I came to the conclusion that I can't simply keep accumulating this knowledge and doing nothing with it. It can be very, very hard to take the first step, but that's all we need to get started. And for now, after living through these past 10 months of a pandemic and the year finally coming to an end, I'm really looking forward to finishing on a high note. That's what she said. So, the next time we're watching a movie or binge watching your favourite series on Netflix, I encourage you to pay a bit more attention to the music. I promise you it's going to make your experience a ton more enjoyable. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe even learned something from it. Who knows? You know how it works. Click the big red button below to subscribe, leave a thumbs up or down in case you're feeling rebellious or didn't enjoy the video for some reason. If you have a comment, you can leave that as well, and I would be very, very grateful if you decide to share this video with your friends. Thank you very much, that's all for today. Bye. What have I got myself into?